Would I like a hug? Sure. Hello everyone, today is a nice day because today I'm doing a little Q&A in order to celebrate me reaching 2,000 subscribers, which is honestly pretty amazing. I never expected to reach this much. To be honest, I expected to quit maybe after a few months of uploading random no gotcha clears, but to my surprise, things have actually started to kick off, and apparently a greater part of the Arknights community has at least recognized me, which I think's pretty damn awesome. So to celebrate, I decided to ask you guys if you wanted me to answer any of your questions, because that's what YouTubers do when they reach subscriber milestones. We're going all the way back to 2014, so maybe this is going to be a little nostalgic for some of y'all. How did I find out about the game? Well, okay, this answer is going to be a little lame, but it's also got a bit lore behind it. So it was all the way back in 2020, where I was bored one summer and I was just scrolling through the Google Play Store looking for something to play, and I found Arknights. I also found Azure Lane, and I played them. Azure Lane sucked, and I thought that Arknights sucked too. And mainly because it's very different to like other tower defense games I played. It's like, oh, it's not like Balloons where you could just put stuff wherever the hell you want. You're very limited with how you place your ranged, operators. And I thought at the time that, oh, ranged operators are the ones that do damage, and your melee operators are the ones that block enemies. And it didn't connect to me yet that, like, there's a lot more to the game than just shooting things. So I thought the game was, like, really limiting, and I'm like, oh, this game sucks because I have to buy all of the overpowered ranged units, and it's like, it's very, very stupid. And it's so 4 years later, I decided to pick up the game again, thinking I missed something, and, well, I really, really was missing something. Is there any low rarity operator you actively avoid using? Yeah, and this one's probably going to be a little shock to you guys. It's like, oh, he's going to say Frostleaf, oh, he's going to say the bad ones. No, it's J. Yeah, I don't like J. J is a very boring operator to me, and I just don't like merchants. I think that having a very, very powerful operator with fast redeploy at the of being really, really cheap, with the expense of you're no longer allowed to generate DP, or if you have the module, you're really, really restricted with how you generate DP, just to not be a very fun time. It's not something that I personally enjoy. I more prefer getting to these, like, really high impactful moments through my own skill rather than just kind of plopping something down and then having to deal with the downside of no longer generating resources. I just don't like merchants, and because of that, I don't like J. What is the most difficult stage you have ever gone through, and what operators did you use? Is there one of them that made you forced to use a 6-star operator? Yes, 1016. I fucking hate this stage. That stage is the reason why I'm no longer doing, like, no gotcha stuff, because I'm stuck on it. I have Milenar, mainly because I like him because he's fun. I think Liberators are just a fun subclass. But he's really, really overpowered, and so I don't use him a lot of the time. Except on 1016. You can look at every other stage in the game, and you can look at my auto-deploy, none of them will have Milenar in it, except 1016, because that stage is actual fucking Uber AIDS. I hate that stage. The fact that it's recommended at Elite 2 level 10 difficulty, and it comes right before, like, a pretty easy boss fight just blows my mind at how tone deaf Hypergriff was when designing this stage, just throwing a bunch of stats at you, and it's just like, oh yeah, when you kill the big stats, you have to deal with even more big stats, and yeah, you also have to reach the cars, which, make it even harder to kill the things, because they're doing necrosis, and they're increasing their attack, and they're completely out of your way, so you have to... I hate this stage. I fucking hate 1016.
Have you ever had a dream that you'll do
every fucking day? Okay, these two questions kind of work together. One of them's asking what the best game mode for learning a kit of an operator is, while the other one's talking about my thoughts on IS, and well, I think the best learning tool is IS. If you are new to the game, getting obsessed with IS is, I think, the best way to really learn how to play Arknights, because it forces you to interact with events and mechanics before you would first do that. It also, because of the temp recruit mechanic, you get loads and loads of experience with operators that you don't currently have, especially at an enhanced level. Or maybe even an operator that you do have but you second guessed. Like, for example, you know, when I first started playing, I didn't really want to use Ambriel until I used her a lot in integrated strategies, and I'm like, oh my god, wow, she's actually pretty strong, you know, for the early game. And a lot of that experience that you can gain from integrated strategies is really integral to your learning experience, as it's a completely free way of which you being rewarded for doing it. It's really fun, there's loads and loads of content to do, and you're constantly interacting with different mechanics, different situations. It allows you to really understand the mechanics and how the value that certain tools and ideas have on certain operators, like how invisibility works, how, you know, this sort of thing works, how a certain subclass that you have never seen before works, and how that can be implemented and used in different ways. It forces you to get creative because of how limiting it is, but at the same time, it's also not very limiting because you have a very large scope with how you can play IS. And, because to be honest, that is just how I played the game. I got obsessed with IS really early on. I played like nothing but IS for like a month or two, and that really helped me learn and understand Arknights' more mechanical complexities. It really made me, you know, really dive deeper into getting better at Arknights thanks to that. And so if you are a new player, I think that the moment you unlock IS, you should really, really want to get like into IS. There's loads of stuff to do. You have 3 whole themes that you can just play. There's so many stages, so many enemies, and it'll give you good insight into what is to come. I think that that as a learning tool is very, very integral. What are my thoughts on a PvP or just multiplayer game mode in Arknights? It would suck. If it PvP would suck. PvE I think would be fine. I think, you know, it's just like you and a friend, you guys can establish the rules between each other. If you have to play with randos, it's probably going to suck because you're either going to get carried or you're going to be the carry, and that, you know, may not always be the most fun thing ever. But PvP will suck 100% because of 2 main things. First off, 99% of the operators will never be used in this game mode because a lot of the operators are designed to counter certain enemies. And unless you are going to be aware of a certain like stage, the meta will be solved really, really quickly. Even if you were aware of the stages within the PvP pool, the stages will be solved quite quickly, and people will be able to say, oh, here's the best lineup, here's the best approach to dealing with this stage. And, you know, maybe it's like, oh, you could send enemies to your opponent. Regardless, a metagame will always form, and I do feel that forcing players to play within a metagame is just not going to be appealing to a majority of the player base. Now, there will be people who do enjoy playing the meta, but I don't think people would enjoy having to play a game mode where you're not allowed to deviate from the meta at all. Because I'm sure even the highest, you know, sweatiest spikes or, you know, the most brain-dead ooga booga kind of players still do, like, enjoy switching things up every now and then versus being forced to play in the most strategic, correct way possible. Because a lot of the time, a lot of the operators in Arknights are designed for specific situations. It's just going to end up being a generalist DPS fest and nothing else. There's not going to be a lot of nuance in a kind of PvP game mode. And so I think it would just kind of take a lot of the smart design out of Arknights, and it's just going to become your generic gotcha slop, you know, constantly chasing power creep, constantly abide by the meta kind of thing. And even if you were to have like a ban list or a restricted list, it would still be very, very oppressive because regardless, well, hey, let's say that we'll just ban all of the 6 stars. Well, now the people who built a bunch of 6 stars are going to be pissed because now they can't play the game. And you're still going to have a meta that's formed around the best 4 and 5 stars. And so regardless on how you handle it, you're just going to be cutting off a majority of the player base. And, you know, technically there is nothing wrong with having like a PvP mode in the game that is optional. However, you're going to have operators that are designed for the PvP mode. You're going to have operators that are designed around this PvP meta, and it'll really, really warp how Arknights is designed at its core. And that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I think it's, you know, it's not only going to be not fun, but it's going to turn Arknights into generic gotcha slop. It'll kind of have to. Either that, or the game mode's just going to be left alone and forgotten, and no one's going to play it, because it's just going to be boring after a while. Who are my top picks to kiss, marry, bonk? Kiss? No one. Marry? No one. Bonk? No one. We must stay strong, brothers. We cannot let these temptresses take us away from what matters. We cannot let our minds be corrupted by our lust. We must stay strong, brothers. We must stay strong. What is my favorite operator of each class? Vanguard, Courier, Guard, Quartz, Defender, Cement, Sniper, Cruise, Caster, Lava the Purgatory, Medic, Perfumer, Supporter, Winflet, and Specialist, Kirara. No, I'm not joking. I am 100% serious. Winflet and Kirara are super fucking fun to use. Favorite archetype, Crushers, and favorite take taken by the Rarity variations. Personally, Hodorer is the best design Crusher, mainly because it's pretty clear that Hypergriff knew exactly what they were doing when designing Hodorer. Hodorer's S1 takes advantage of both, the high HP pool, boosting his HP-based survivability, and his really high instance damage by the nature of being a crit. His S2 helps with crowd control, helping him be a kind of really sustainable lane holder. And his S3, although is kind of an idiot-proof murder a boss skill, of which I am guilty of using on some occasions, it still does retain part of the Crusher subclass identity. And so, to be honest, the reason why people don't like Hodorer is because he is, in every sense, a well-designed Crusher. But because you're not allowed to like Crushers, because they don't have defense, you kind of have to hate Hodorer, sadly. Favorite subclass of each class. For Vanguards, Pioneer, Guards, Crusher, Defender, Fortress, Sniper, Marksman, Caster, Mystic Casters. Medics, I guess the core medic, I can't really make my mind up here. I guess I just prefer core medics. Supporters, artificers, and specialists, dollkeepers. It is funny that I got 2 questions asking about ritualists and primal casters, and to be honest, I do have a quite long-winded opinion about that, so that might be its own video. But what I will say is I really like the idea, but I'm not a big fan of the execution of primal casters. Related to the previous question, what are my opinions on operators who can't stand alone? I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think having the option of having extra depth onto the game is, perfectly fine. And I think those people who are very critical of operators who require other operators to, be useful are purely just looking at it from like a top-end metagamey kind of perspective. Because why would you ever want to have why would you rather have 2 operator slots that essentially just buff 1 operator slot when you could have 2 operators that are already good, Why have a bad operator that needs another operator to be good when you could just have 2 good operators? That's kind of a mindset that I don't agree with. I think it's kind of lame. I think that's a very lame way of playing the game. Again, you do you. I have to say that because, everyone's going to get mad at me if I don't. But I think having a lot of operators that do require other operators to function, like your abjurers, like your artificers, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's perfectly fine purely because it just adds depth onto the game. In the case of specifically Nymph and the Primal Casters, that's a different story, because they are physically incapable of standing alone. They literally require that you use another operator for them to work as intended, which is what I'm going to get into if I ever make a video about Primal Casters and Ritualists. But ultimately, it's perfectly fine to have a subclass like Artificers, where their job is to buff everyone else. It's not good to have a subclass that requires an Artificer for them to be good, which is kind of the situation with Primal Casters, but instead of Artificers, it's Ritualists. So that's a whole, larger discussion to be had. But ultimately, no, there's nothing wrong with having an operator or a subclass that is defined around purely supporting other operators. That's perfectly fine. It adds depth to the game. It can make the game a lot more interesting and fun for the players who do enjoy that. How do I feel about Arknights collabs? How would you feel interested seeing Arknights involved with external media? I have always been very critical of gacha game collabs, purely because it's probably the easiest way to drum up hype. And by extension, the laziest way to drive up hype. It's really easy to just say, oh, Arknights and this other thing are now coming together, which, you know, that'll drum up hype. You don't have to make the thing actually good. You just need to say, hey, look, that's a thing I recognize. I like that thing. I'm excited because I'm aware that that thing exists. And it can lead to complete and utter slop, which is what you often see in a lot of other gacha games. But with Arknights, though, as long as you are capable of enjoying the experience without needing to understand the actual source material that they're collabing with, there is nothing wrong with it. It's fine. Like, for example, the Monster Hunter collab, I don't know anything about Monster Hunter, I still enjoyed the event. I didn't get very far in it because I was really new at the time, but I still had fun with the event. It was something new, it was something fresh, and it was something I was capable of enjoying without having to be, you know, super knowledgeable about Monster Hunter. Same thing with Rainbow Six. There's a lot of effort put into, you know, these operators to make them work in Arknights, to make them, you know, properly represented in Rainbow Six, but again, you don't need to play or know anything about Rainbow Six to enjoy this collab. And that's something that I do feel is very important, and is the reason why I think Arknights is really good at this, really good at a really good game, is because it's not just stopping at, here is a generic reskinned event that is just, oh look, thing you recognize, because a lot of gacha games like to use that as a crutch of, you know, for actual quality. And so, yeah, I think Arknights does it fine. Would I care, though, if there was something that I recognize? Of course. Thing I recognize, oh wow, I understand what that is. That's amazing. It's like, yeah, it's like, obviously I would be excited if Arknights collabed with a thing that I recognize. Like, duh. In external media, I wouldn't care. Arknights did a collab with Mustache, and that's a game that I've actually played. I didn't really care, because I was over Mustache at the time. It's cool, yeah, but, you know, okay. Related to the previous question, just for fun, would you like to see a secret layer of Arknights? Secret layers are these little, like, special packs of cards you can get in Magic the Gathering that are, like, limited time events. They usually have, like, special artwork, you know, special theming. Recently they did, like, a Hatsune Miku secret layer. The thing with secret layers is that they're all reprints of pre-existing cards. You can't make a new card, or else you have this, like, you know, this card only exists in this, like, month-long span of when you can buy this, and it'd be super limited, and no one would like that. So the whole point would be, hey, I can see Arknights characters represented in cards I'm familiar with. It's like, oh wow, cool, Amiya's on Swords to Plowshares. It's like, that kind of stuff I wouldn't be very interested in, just to see character I recognize on a random unrelated card. But instead, if you could really take in, like, the flavor and make the cards very flavorful, you know, find cards that exist that really would fit these kinds of operators, then yeah, I think that would be really, really cool. I would love to see, like, Patriot as Blightsteel Colossus or something. I think that would be really, really fun. And so, yeah, I think, if there was, like, some kind of Arknights secret layer, like, depending on what it is, it could be either really, really cool or kind of suck. So, it would be up to my judgment. For someone who seriously appreciates more in-depth discussions of media and sees characters as a manifestation of beliefs and values, how come you've hardly read the Arknights story outside of Quartz's operator record? Why do you not consider yourself a Vorthos so much as you consider yourself a Johnny? Because reading is boring. That's it. Like, I've watched the anime, and I took away some values from the anime. I don't remember it that much, I definitely would like to rewatch it, but ultimately, I just don't like reading. I think it's very boring. Just having to sit down, look at still images, talk to me would be very, very, very boring. Now, if I was forced to do it, I had literally nothing else to do, I would do it, and I would probably really enjoy it. But frankly, I'm not a fan of reading. That's purely it. If it was all given to me in, like, anime form, I would watch it, I would enjoy it, and I would really, really love to have that kind of discussion. But yeah, I just don't like reading. Quartz was just kind of an exception because I was just curious. It was something that I'm like, this will only take like 15 minutes and, you know, it'll be fun while I do it. Rather than being hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of loads of kinds of content. It's definitely a little overwhelming and not something that I would be super interested in just diving deep into right now. Favorite Arknights OST? Oh, here's a hot take. I don't listen to Arknights music. The game's muted 99% of the time. The only time it isn't muted is when I'm recording and I need the audio. I'm usually listening to some random crap in the background. Usually just whatever nerdy power metal I currently feel taste for at that moment. If I could implement any mechanical change into Arknights, what would it be? Remove LMD. I absolutely hate that in so many gacha games there's just a currency that you don't ever use to buy things. You purely just use it to do things, and it's like, this is a waste of time. This is stupid. This currency doesn't do anything other than restrict me from playing the game. This sucks. I hate it. Just remove LMD. Or if you're going to keep LMD, instead of making it required to do things, you instead just have an LMD shop where you can buy stuff. Like, ugh. What do you think of an option to cap operator levels to a levels recommendation? 100 bajillion%. This will not restrict how anyone plays the game. It's an option, and it should 100% be there. I think there should be a little like slider on every single stage that's like, hey, here's the level that will automatically cap your operators at. Or here's like even the level of skills we can cap your operators at. So you don't have to worry about being over leveled on a stage, or you just want to do a stage at it's how it's intended, doing it for a niche player, doing like an under leveled thing. It's like that would be so much just freedom. I would love it. Please, Hypergriff. It would make so much sense. So many people want it, but please. If there's one thing you would want to convince the wider Arknights community of, what would it be? This is not even really related to Arknights. This is just kind of a general life thing. I don't want you to hear this and to get mad, you know, just like, oh man, he hates my way of living. It's like, no. This is just a personal thing. A lot of the problems in your life can be dealt with by dealing with them, as crazy as that sounds. The solution to a lot of the problems that you face in life shouldn't be to pin it on other things, to worry about changing systems. It shouldn't be about trying to warp the world around you to hopefully maybe fix the issues that you have. A lot of the time it can be done simply by just doing it. And the worst thing that I think a lot of people kind of fall into is utilizing coping mechanisms to kind of pretend that the issue isn't happening, when in reality it is happening, and they're more just kind of using it as a way of coping with the issue rather than dealing with the issue. And again, I don't want to be like mean. I'm not trying to be like, oh, you know, so, oh, I need these coping mechanisms to be happy. And it's like, I think that's part of it. I think that's part of the coping, is that you have to convince yourself that this is necessary for you to be happy. And I don't believe that should be what a lot of people should have to deal with in their lives. A lot of the times, a lot of the vices, the very hedonistic kind of short-term pleasures that you engage in, which are fine in moderation, but are often done in excess, mainly because it's that instantaneous gratification that is a very easy way of escaping a lot of the hardships of life. And so, to all of those watching, know that you can do it. The problem isn't with how the world is structured, because honestly, it probably is. The world sucks. But I should probably reword that. The problem may be how the world is. The problem may just be it's unfair. The problem may not be something that you can just get rid of. But the solution is within yourself. You shouldn't have to succumb to addictions. You shouldn't have to succumb to scapegoats, to explaining the issues of the world around you. What that'll do is that'll cause more unhealthy, obsessions and addictions, and can lead to ideological radicalization with the more that you choose to scapegoat your issues onto outside things. Instead, I want you to be a bit more self-aware about the things that you do, the reasons why you do them, and to try and come to the conclusion that maybe you can overcome these things. And sometimes there are just some things that are really difficult to deal with, and sometimes it may not be very obvious. But the solution isn't to try and run away. The solution is to try and accept it and try and deal with it the best that you can. Again, I don't want to be, super mean. I'm not saying that, you're a bad person because you do the things that you do. I want you to be as happy as possible. I want you to be able to be like that. But the way to happiness is not to avoid problems or to be over-reliant on coping mechanisms or to spend all of your days within these more hedonistic, isolating desires. Sometimes it's good to just go outside and enjoy the breeze, to escape from, not to escape from your problems, but to either realize that the problem itself is artificial, like stuff that would happen online, or to realize that the problem is not something that can be solved through some radical idea or some insane, plot, but rather is something that you yourself can come to a rationalization of within yourself. This isn't, again, it's not related to Arknights, it's just related to life in general, because in a lot of gacha game, not just gacha game, just weeb, in the weeb community in general, a lot of people see like the anime aesthetic as a way of kind of escaping a lot of their own real life issues. It's a way of escapism because the aesthetic is meant to be as pleasing and nice as possible. That's just kind of how it's designed. And so you'll have a lot of people within this community who utilize so many methods of escapism, go on the internet, and then there's a lot of people who kind of constantly tell each other more and more ways to escape problems or to kind of put themselves in an echo chamber where there's no way to properly deal with your issues, but instead to just kind of either subsist and to distract yourself or to blame everyone else besides yourself. Again, I'm not saying that the problem is your fault, but the solution shouldn't be you hoping and praying that someone else solves it for you, or that some system needs to be radically changed for you to be happy in life, because a lot of the time it is just a matter of perspective, a matter of your willingness to want to better yourself, your willingness to want to see a brighter day. Sometimes, yeah, you do just have to accept that life sucks sometimes, but it's the fact that life can be great a lot of the time that makes life genuinely worth living. Because believe me, it's like, doing this channel, obviously there's lots of, people who will be critical, lots of people who will, be sometimes not even really constructive, just kind of mean. And the best solution to that isn't to deal with them, because sometimes they don't really care about the truth, so why bother arguing? Just go outside and realize it doesn't matter. Sometimes the solution to these problems isn't to blame other people, nor is it even really to blame yourself. It's not to blame anyone, it's instead to just deal with the problem. So, to those, and no, coping with the problem is not dealing with the problem. Coping with the problem is avoiding the problem. Sometimes you do need to cope with things, sometimes you're just having a bad day and you need to pick up, sometimes maybe you're going through a breakup and you're just like, I need to unwind a bit, something like that. But you have to have a bit of self-awareness, you have to have your limits, you have to understand if you're going a little too far. And sometimes people do go a little too far without realizing that what they're doing is harmful or is extreme in any way. And so to those who are listening still, after me rambling for about 5 minutes or whatever, I do hope that you look into yourself and realize, hey, maybe these things that I'm doing aren't the best way of dealing with my problems, or maybe they're not the correct thing that I should be doing. Maybe these things that I'm doing don't actually bring me happiness. Maybe they're just more vices that I really shouldn't be engaging in that much. Again, you do you. Just try and live your best life. And the best way to live your life is to be honest with yourself. And it's difficult, yeah. It's very difficult. But just know that, I want you to do better. That's a weird way of putting it. I don't want you to do better, I want you to feel better. I want you to be the best person you can be. And usually it just comes with, dealing with your problems, head on. And so I thank you all for sticking around. It's definitely been quite the adventure, for the past few months making Arknights content. It's been very nice. Well, the whole point of this channel is to give, to make a discussion, to give nuance to things, because everyone's just like, oh, Frostleaf bad, Frostleaf le bad, ha ha ha. And it's like, well, why is Frostleaf bad? Is the meaning of the content really to just say thing is bad and everyone can, you know, nod in agreement? It's like, oh wow, this is good content, I agree with it. Or is it more to try and create some kind of discussion? I'm very happy that a lot of people who do watch my content don't even agree with me on a lot of stuff. That makes me very happy. I think that is at least some kind of merit to my content, that people can disagree with it, but still enjoy it. People are still like, you know, willing to congratulate me on 2,000 subscribers while not being the most agreeable person out there. I don't want everyone to agree with me. I just want people to like step away from my videos feeling like something has changed, feeling like that, you know, that something has come out and impacted them in some way. Because that's all I want to do. I don't really want to be the most like famous, you know, Arknights YouTuber ever. I just want to make an impact on someone, you know, to have them walk away and be like, you know what, that makes sense. I want to see what I can think more about that. You know, maybe it's just a perspective. Maybe I'm just completely wrong. But it's the fact that I am wrong gets someone really thinking about it. Maybe that does help them a little bit. You know, I'm flawed. We're all flawed. No one's perfect. And I don't think that we should strive to be perfect. We should instead just strive to be better. That just sounds like a weird like apology video. But I am very thankful that so many of you continue to watch my content, and hopefully you will continue to watch my content into the future, where I will definitely make more stuff. So, thank you. I love you all. It's been amazing. Bye-bye.